This entire video is about me testing out this plugin called Dehancer. The kind people at that company sent me a license to try this out and to do a review on, which coincidentally I was looking for a short film that I'm producing at the moment where I wanted a vintage film look using anamorphic lenses. I'm going to talk about the camera I'm using. I use, but what you're seeing right now are just some test shoots. But I wanted to first start out the video by saying Dehancer sent me a license to test out, and this is me testing out the plugin for the very first time. Have no experience. I'm not a colorist. I wanted to use it only through Premiere Pro. You can use it with DaVinci. I don't know DaVinci. I am a novice when it comes to color correction. I just wanted something that I could throw on some footage and make it look cool. So that is my disclaimer, and now I'll get into the camera I used. This is a GH6. The beauty of the Panasonic's cameras is that they're really advertising their anamorphic features more than Canon and Sony. So this is called anamorphic stacking. That's where you take an anamorphic lens as a taking lens to another anamorphic adapter. This is a ND, variable ND. It's 5 stops, and this also has a 1/8 mist built in. And all the test shots you're gonna see come from this setup. There is some stabilization, but it's not that great. So Panasonic has their own stabilization mode. And with the lens information, since it's a 50, I made it a 50 manual. But then with the squeeze factor and the anamorphic stacking, that kind of screws it up. So I'm not really sure what happens there. I was shooting in Vlog. I had the dynamic range boost turned on. When you turn on the dynamic range boost, the minimum ISO is 2000. So when I was outside in bright sunlight, I had to that became an issue. So I had to stop down the lens in addition to using the full 5 stop of the variable ND. And over here I was shooting MOV and the record quality. This is the record quality I used. The log view assist, I turned that on to the Rec 709 so that I can see it on my monitor, but I didn't use the monitor the entire time. And then you want to use this right here, the anamorphic de-squeeze. So this de-squeezes the anamorphic so that you can see it in the full aspect ratio. So I'm going to get to the full aspect ratio here, and you can see the bars. That's what those are. The Suri opens up to a 1.8, but when you put on the Greatjoy, it automatically makes it a 2.8. And then, so the numbers, the aperture is kind of weird to get the proper aperture, what's really going on into the sensor. So I don't know how to figure out that math yet, but I did adjust the aperture here, and I was going all the way up to 4 and 5.6. Sometimes I try not to go to 16, but I went pretty high or close in the aperture because at the 2000 ISO, there really wasn't a lot I could do. Sometimes I think there were a couple clips where I disabled the dynamic boost and I just went normal and I just stopped the ISO down as far as possible. And as far as the focusing goes, I focused by my hand because I didn't have a follow focus. So I was just focusing like this when I was out there by myself. And when you focus with a stacked anamorphic, you need to keep the taking lens on infinity, and then all the focusing is done right here. For reference, this is my computer right now that I'm using. It is a Apple Mac Studio with M1 Ultra early 2022. Before Dehancer, I used to use Magic Bullet Lux before Lux was purchased by another company, but it used to be through Red Giant, and Magic Bullet had their own film emulation here. I don't know if this was the exact, no, this is probably not the one I used back in the day, and we're talking mid-2000s, 2010-ish, around there. It looks like they're still selling it, Magic Bullet Lux. And this is what I was using at the very beginning of my editing career. Here's Film Convert Nitrate. I was using this with the Premiere Pro plugin for maybe a year. I did purchase it. Right here it says it's $125. I think I purchased, it was around that price when I got it. This was a few years ago, maybe 2018, 2019 is when I was using Film Convert. And I thought it ran a little too slow and there wasn't a lot of options, But as I get into Dehancer, maybe having fewer options is better, so you don't have that paradox of choice. I don't know about this version right now in 2023, but when I was using it back in 2018, 2019, it wasn't as feature rich, and I thought it didn't really give me the look I was going for. It took too long as well. But here it's only $125, which is cheaper than Dehancer. I'll get to Dehancer. And now here is Dehancer Pro. This is the one I have right now, the license. And I think I have this one, the $399, which has the video plugin. I am only using Premiere Pro. That's my system. I don't use DaVinci, at least not now. I don't use After Effects. I used to use Final Cut Pro, but it's pretty much Premiere Pro. And it looks like it's $399 for the whole suite. And then looks like they have different options to, if you want to get this a la carte. Now I'm in Premiere Pro. Here's all the clips I shot on that GH6 with the anamorphic lens adapters on. So I shot in MOV format, so these are still compressed. I could transcode all these to ProRes, but I'm just going to leave them natively as shot, which is going to affect the render times. Here's how I first need to de-squeeze it. So I double click here, and then I just want to make new sequence from clip. And then I still get this 4:3 image. Let me get rid of the audio here. Don't need the audio. And since all of the footage is the same, whatever I do to this clip, I'm just going to drag everything in and then copy and paste. So I use a resource that's another YouTuber, Anamorphic on a budget. Really like this guy's resources here that he created this free calculator. Donate if you want to donate to this. This is a great resource. I can't find another resource like this online. The 38:40, that's just a common ratio. You could change it to whatever you want, but this is the preset that's already there. My anamorphic squeeze factor is a 1.8, so I'm going to put 1.8. And then the footage width and size, that's the original footage width and size. The width is 5760, and then the height is 4320. And then I just hit calculate. And then you can see I have the timeline settings and then what to change the horizontal and vertical rescaling. So then I go back to Premiere here, and I'm going to go into sequence settings. So the frame size horizontal, that is 3840. So I put in 3840. And then the vertical is 1600, so 1600. And then it's looks like a 12:5 ratio. Let's do the codec 422. I don't know if that matters. Hit OK. Hit OK. And then now that just that didn't de-squeeze it. That just changed the timeline settings. And then now I gotta click the clip, go into Effects Controls, and here's where I'm going to change the footage rescaling. So it's automatically by default uniform scale. So I'm going to uncheck the uniform scale, and then now I get the height and the width separately. So the height here, vertical, is 37.1%. So I just type in here 37.1, enter, and then my horizontal is 66.7. So I go into the width, 66.7, boom. So I don't need this resource anymore. Let me just expand. So before, this is what it looked like when I shot it. And then now this is the fully de-squeezed on a proper timeline. Those are the steps you got to take. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into my project. I'm going to select all of the other clips. And then I'm just going to drag it in here like that. And those are all the clips. I'm going to get rid of the audio. And all I'm going to do is copy this and then select all my clips and paste attributes. I want to select motion, hit OK, and then now all of the clips are properly de-squeezed on the right timeline. But these are all vlog raw. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spare you the time it's going to take me to trim all these clips before I start the Dehancer plugin. All right, I edited all of that footage. I just made some selected clips, and now it's a total of about 3.5 minutes of all the clips. These are still vlog. There's no color correction applied yet. I've already installed Dehancer, the plugin, so I just go to my effects controls panel. Oh, I just go to my effects list, and then under video effects, open that up. Film emulation, that was already there, and then there's the plugin Dehancer. This is 1.3. So what you can do is apply this filter to each individual clip, or you can apply it to an adjustment layer, which is what I am going to do. Adjustment layer, and I'm going to create it for the settings of this timeline. There's my adjustment layer. I'm going to apply the adjustment layer right there, and then my effect, the Dehancer effect, is going to be on this adjustment layer. So go back to effects and then apply it to that adjustment layer. Boom. Okay. Because I shot this on a GH6, go into the input. The source, I don't want to do Rec 709. I want to go to choosing a camera. So I choose a camera and I open all of their camera presets they have. I go down to Panasonic. They don't have very many Panasonic cameras already pre-selected or pre-made. So I choose between a GH5S and a GH5. I'm going to choose a GH5 because I think that's closer to the sensor of the GH6. And then once I choose the GH5, instantly you can see it's more of a closer look to what a GH5 LUT would give you. But I'm hoping that over time, as the GH6 becomes more popular, they're going to offer that. I'm pretty surprised they haven't offered that already, and they haven't even, looks like there are no presets for the other Panasonic cameras. There's no BGH1. There's none of the full frame Panasonic cameras. I guess they're not really supporting Panasonic, but yeah. So I'm gonna GH5. So I wish that's one criticism. This is a long list. I remembered with the other film plugins, the film look plugins, I didn't have this many options. It's great that you have this many options, but I wish that Dehancer were able to categorize these as opposed to just having one long list that seems like they're going to keep adding to. My problem with this list is that they combine the 35mm film stock and then the 35mm motion picture film stocks. So you can't really differentiate unless you're familiar with all of the different stocks, which one is meant for still photos and which one is meant for motion. And when you select the stock, it changes the look of it. So at first, I was overwhelmed with this many options. And what I end up doing is going through every single one and waiting it to load and then just seeing what the look looks like. What I would like to have is a bit more organization with this so that I could choose from their other folders. There's subcategories of folders where if I want Fujifilm photo stock, I have a folder that just has all of the Fujifilm photo stock. If I want Fujifilm film stock, there's a folder that has all of the Fujifilm film stock. You get what I'm saying. So with this long list, it's really hard to make a decision, so you get some decision paralysis. But I tend to stick with the Kodak Vision stocks because that's what I'm used to, or I'll stick with the Fujifilm stocks. Let's see what the Vision 3s look like. Here's the 200T, and let's go to the 250D, and 500T, and the 50D. Ooh, okay. Let's, for right now, stick with the 200T. Even though I was in daylight, I was shooting with a bloom mist filter. So here you can see there's a bloom filter you can add to it. But since I already shot with a bloom mist on, I'm not going to add more. But let's go through these other settings. With the film developer, I just enable this. And this makes it look more like film. I think that's what the purpose is. I leave these all to their defaults for right now until I'm going with a specific look. For the film compression, I turn this on. Look at the highlights when I turn this film compression and when I enable it. Just pay attention to the sky. You see all the highlights in the sky? It just compressed it down more towards film. Color head, don't know what that is, not changing that. Oh, film grain. So I don't like a lot of film grain unless I'm going for a heavy look. And a lot of these other features here enable you a heavy post scratchy film grindhouse look. I don't want to go for a grindhouse look. So with the grain, this is what the default is. The amount is 20. I'm going to go to a 2. And then halation. So this is something that when you saw earlier, Dehancer sells by itself on its own plugin. The halation is what gives the footage more of a vintage look because it plays with the highlights, the colors of the highlights around subjects. So I don't know if it's going to show up on this image. Let me enable the halation. Turn that on. Okay, you probably didn't see it. It's really subtle, but what it's doing, if I can go to a shot that's maybe you might see it with a close-up. Here we go. You might see it with this one. So let me disable the halation. So if you look at the highlights around the edges of these flowers, when I enable it, you start seeing some purple pink fringing on the edges of the highlights, and that's the halation. Let me expand it and to see if it affects any other images better to give you a better demo of this. Okay, here we go. This is a good demonstration. So halation is on. Turn off the halation. Look at the top of this building here. It's disabled. Turn it on. And you should see slightly, because it's at the default settings of the halation. I like it like that. I like the halation. Bloom, I already addressed that. Vignette, I'm not going to touch the vignette. I don't need it to look more filmy. Film breath, the gate weave, the false color. Those are more when you're trying to add an effect that looks like a film projector, which I don't want to do, or damaged film. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to enable it at all. Let's go to the print. So this is the second filter setting that really changes the look of the Dehancer plugins. Let me go back to that one of the earlier clips. There's 4 other options. And this is like a print stock, like a film print stock. So you have the negative stock and then you have the print stock. Let me just try these different print stocks and you can see it drastically changing the look. That's a Fujifilm, Kodak, and then this glossy Endura. Ooh, that Endura looks nice. Supposedly, this Kodak 2383 print film, I believe that's the most popular, the most used ones in normal Hollywood films whenever they shoot 35. So I'm going to stick with that. And this is the look I'm getting naturally. So a lot of these shots are under different lighting conditions. So what I'm going to have to do is I put one Dehancer setting on this adjustment layer, and because it's just one blanket setting over all of these different clips, I'm getting different exposures and different looks here. Ooh, some of these shots are amazing. At the end of this video, I will render all this and then show you what this looks like all rendered out. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the individual clips and start tweaking it using the Lumetri. This is all personal preference, right? So what I like might not be what you like. But this is my look here. Okay, this one, it looks like it's a little dark. So let me up the exposure. And it takes a second for Lumetri to kick in. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this to all of these clips. And then I'm going to render everything and export it and then show it at the end of this video. Okay, I'm actually starting to render the entire project this time and not just doing a test render. So you can see here my estimated render time. This is about a 3 minute and 20-something second video. And the render time is, it started out with an hour, but it's now going down 40 minutes to render a 3.5 minute clip. And I'm not using a ton of effects or filters besides Dehancer. This is just Dehancer by itself. Nothing else going on. The footage is compressed footage that was taken directly from the GH6. So maybe this would speed up if I could transcoded everything to ProRes. But I have a pretty fast computer. I went through my specs already. I think my computer's pretty fast, and this is taking now it's taking over 40 minutes to render all this. So I'm gonna go get a coffee, and then I will show the full video. But like I said earlier, probably my biggest criticism with this plugin currently is the how long it takes to render, even if you have a fast system.